Hi, I'm Mark Davies. I'm a retired professor of linguistics and I'm also the creator of EnglishCorpora.org. In this video, I'm going to talk about what might be the most important and exciting addition to EnglishCorpora.org in several years. This is the integration of really insightful data from AI, or large language models. Here's where we'll be going in this video. First, I'll give a very short introduction to the corpora from EnglishCorpora.org and point you to where you can get more information, including videos like this one. Second, I'll briefly summarize in just a minute or two the information that's already available elsewhere, which discusses how well the predictions from LLMs, large language models, matches up with actual corpus data. But I'll then spend the rest of the video showing that it's not a this versus that situation. In other words, corpora versus LLMs. Rather, it's a matter of this and that, taking the insights from LLMs and adding them to the rich corpus data, and thus creating the best of both worlds. By the way, if you're already familiar with EnglishCorpora.org, and you've already seen the comparison of corpus data and LLM predictions, then feel free to use the timestamps below to jump to the heart of the video, how LLMs and corpora can work together. So here's an incredibly quick overview of EnglishCorpora.org. There are extensive overviews of the corpora from these links, both PDFs and videos, as well as many other PDFs and videos on specific topics. But just to summarize very quickly, EnglishCorpora.org are the most widely used online corpora. Some other large corpus sites are primarily just billions of words from web pages where there isn't much variation by genre, time period, or dialect, or at least there's no easy way to search that. But at EnglishCorpora.org, everything is designed around variation between genres, time periods, and dialects. Many of the corpora, such as COA and Globe, are 100 times as large as any other comparable corpora. And there are a very wide range of search types at EnglishCorpora.org, arguably much more than any other corpus site. So let's now discuss how well the predictions from LLMs match up with actual data from corpora. And again, this is only a very brief summary of what you can find on this topic at EnglishCorpora.org, where there are almost 90 pages in 7 white papers, which discuss this in much more detail. First, LLMs are very good at collocates, nearby words, arguably much better than sites like EnglishCorpora.org or Sketch Engine. For example, these are just some collocates for colander, and you can see a picture of that. Here are the collocates for colander at Sketch Engine, EnglishCorpora.org, at ChatGPT and Gemini. But the important point is that the LLMs provide insightful discussion of what the collocates tell us about the meaning and usage of a word. As the white papers and videos discuss, LLMs are arguably better at collocates than corpora because of the advanced neural networks and trillions of words of data on which they're based. The LLMs are especially good at using collocates to compare two words, such as nuance and subtlety. EnglishCorpora.org does these well. Sketch Engine does it even better. But in both cases, we're just left looking at a list of collocates for each word, and we have to be a junior linguist to explain the difference. Only the LLMs provide an explanation of what the contrasting collocates mean. And I can say, as a native speaker of English and as a trained linguist, that these explanations are incredibly good. Third, the word frequency data and phrase frequency data that LLMs provide doesn't match up very well with corpus data. The LLMs are pretty good at analyzing corpus data, for example, ranking words or phrases according to frequency, but they just aren't very good at generating these lists themselves. But as mentioned, if we give the LLMs a list of words or phrases, they're actually quite good at analyzing the data and assigning words to, for example, genres or subgenres or time periods or dialects. Again, look at the white papers and video for much more information on this. So let's now get to the heart of the video. Up to this point, we've discussed what corpora do better than LLMs and what LLMs do better than corpora. But maybe that isn't the point. Maybe the point is getting the two resources to work together and for each to contribute what they do best. Corpora have great frequency data on words, phrases, collocates, and syntactic instructions, including variation between genres, time periods, and dialects. But as we've seen, LLMs are really good at classifying and analyzing information. So in the examples that follow, we'll show how we can combine the two resources. This is all done very quickly and easily at EnglishCorpora.org. We first display the corpus data, just like you're probably already used to. And then with one click, the corpus data is sent via API calls, but don't worry about the technical details, to the LLM. The corpus data is then analyzed or categorized, and the explanation, or the categorized collocates, are displayed in the corpus interface. We'll see many examples of this in the examples that follow. Also, in the examples that follow, you'll see data from 6 different LLMs: ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Anthropic, DeepSeek, Meta, and Grok. All of these are available via the Corpus interface, and you can rerun a search from one LLM in another LLM, and thus compare the data. But remember that the insights from the LLMs are not perfect. Sometimes they won't be very insightful, and occasionally they'll just be wrong. If you're looking for perfection, it might be best just not to use the new AI features at EnglishCorpora.org. But overall, even to a native speaker and a trained linguist, I find the insights from the LLMs to be very, very good. So let's first look at some examples of how LLMs can help us to categorize and classify the collocates of a word. When it comes to collocates, corpora typically just give a list of the words, or collocates, that occur near a given word, the node word. For example, these are the collocates of the noun cap in coca. There are lots of fancy formulas for how to focus on meaningful nearby words, but at the end of the day, it's still just a list. If you've spent the last 5 or 10 years looking at lists of collocates, maybe you can analyze these quickly and efficiently. But for the other 99% of people, including nearly all non-native speakers, it's still just a long list of words. But now at EnglishCorpora.org, you can just click on Categorize to see the collocates grouped together meaningfully. In other words, by meaning. The corpus sends the data to an LLM, and you get to choose which LLM that is. The LLM sends back a categorized list of collocates, and then this is displayed to the end user. You can still click on a collocate to see the relevant concordance lines. But the main point is that you now have a better idea of what the collocates mean and how they're related to each other. That's kind of the whole point of collocates, but it's something that most corpora haven't done successfully to this point. In COCA and the iWeb corpora, you can also see the collocates grouped together by part of speech, such as these collocates of B-O-W, either bow or bow. That's part of the problem here. They're spelled the same, but they have totally different meanings. There is additional information in the table that lets you know, for example, whether the colloquet is typically a subject or object of the node word. But again, these are just lists of words. But now, after the collocates are sent to the LLM to be categorized, we can see which collocates refer to the bow that someone wears in their hair, or the bow of a ship, or a bow and arrow. So the collocates are finally helpful, especially for language learners and non-native speakers. And this same process can apply to phrases, such as soft noun. If you translate soft into another language, it might be a different word depending on whether we're talking about someone's voice, or the softness of their hands, or soft colors, or idioms like soft money or soft power. Wouldn't it be nice to group these phrases by meaning? Well, of course we now can. And suddenly the different meanings come to life in ways that they never would or could without the help of large language models. Let's now discuss how we can use analyses from LLMs to better understand differences between two groups of data. We'll start out with comparing words. First, since we've just been talking about collocates, let's talk about comparing the meaning and usage of two words via contrasting collocates. Suppose that we have two very similar words like quandary and predicament. Sure, we can sit and stare at the contrasting list of collocates and, especially if we're a native speaker or a trained linguist, maybe we can see how the two lists of contrasting collocates shed insight into the meaning of the two contrasting words. Or we can just click on Use AI to compare, and we see something like the following. First, what the collocates tell us about the meaning of the first word, and then what the collocates tell us about the second word, and then, most importantly, how the two contrasting lists of collocates can help to differentiate between the meaning and usage of the two words. Here's another example for provoke and incite. Before you look at the analysis from the LLM, spend a minute or two trying to figure out for yourself the difference in meaning between the two words. Go ahead, pause the video. We'll wait for you. Got the answer? Now we click on the button to see the analysis from the LLM. How did you do? And how did the LLM do? Pretty good, isn't it? Let's take one last example, fleeting and ephemeral, which are both adjectives that refer to something that passes away quickly. Okay, go ahead and try to figure out the meaning based on the collocates. And now take a look at the analysis given by the LLM. Do you agree with the analysis? I've looked at many of these comparisons, and almost invariably the LLM does as good of a job or even better than I, a native speaker and a trained corpus linguist, can do. Can you see what LLMs have to offer in cases like this, especially for non-native speakers and especially for language learners? In addition to comparing the collocates of two words, we can use the LLMs to compare the collocates of a word in different genres, different time periods, or different dialects, all of which give us further insight into the meaning and usage of a word. For example, these are the collocates of chain as a noun in fiction and academic texts in COCA. Look at the list and try to see how chain is used differently in the two genres, and this is actually a pretty easy word. Now we click to have the LLM analyze the difference. Pause the video, look at its explanation, and see how well it's done. We can also compare across time periods. Here are the phrases for adjective plus women in the KWIC corpus. The data for the 1800s is on the left, and the data for the last 30 to 40 years is on the right. What is being said about women 150 years ago that's different than today? Go ahead, pause the video, and try to figure it out for yourself. Now we click on the button to have the LLM compare the list from the two time periods. Again, I think it's done a great job analyzing the differences, and we could even follow up with more detailed analyses if we wanted to. Finally, let's compare across dialects to see how the meaning and usage of a word can vary from one country to another. These are phrases for adjective plus scheme. The phrases on the left are from the US and the ones on the right are from the UK. I've highlighted some collocates in American English that should help to see the differences between the two varieties. But of course, we can click on the button to see the analysis from the LLM, where it's easily able to see that there's a more negative sense associated with scheme in the US than in the UK. Rather than giving two contrasting lists in two genres or two time periods or two dialects, we can also have the LLM analyze the data in lists that include all genres or all time periods or all dialects. For example, these are the collocates of adjective food in the 20 decades in the KWIC corpus. Sure, we could scroll up and down the list of phrases trying to see how the phrase has changed over time. Or we could just click on the button and have the LLM help us. And here's the analysis by GPT, and then also Claude, and then also Gemini. Or take a look at these phrases for soft noun in the different genres and also time periods in the KWIC corpus. Again, we could spend 2 to 3 minutes scrolling up and down to try and find patterns. What phrases occur in spoken or fiction or newspapers or academic. Or we could just click on the button to have the LLM give its first approximation. So here's the answer from Llama, and here's the answer from Grok, from XAI. Is the analysis perfect? No. Is it always incredibly insightful? No. But is it a good summary which will help non-native speakers and language learners? We definitely believe that it is. One last example. Let's look at words ending in ism in the 20 countries in the globe corpus. With one click, we analyze 100 words in 20 different countries, 2,000 data points altogether. Again, has the LLM said everything of value that there is to say about this variation? Of course not, but it's a good starting point, which we could follow up on with more detailed queries. Let's now discuss comparisons across all of the sections of a corpus, genres, time periods, or dialects, in chart displays. Here we're looking at the overall frequency of a word, phrase, collocate, or even grammatical construction, rather than, as in the past queries, individual words, phrases, collocates, and so on. For example, consider the like construction, conjunction plus pronoun plus a form of be plus like plus a comma, as in, and I was like, no way. As part of the data that's sent to the LLM, it sends the top 20 phrases that match this string, so the LLM has some idea of what we're talking about. The LLM then gives pretty good insight into why this construction is found in some genres more than in others, and how this same idea might be expressed by other phrases in other genres in the corpus. A second example is the construction need followed by negation. For example, needn't or need not, compared to the constructions like don't need to. Pause the video and think about what might have been factors that motivated a decrease in the construction. Now click to see the explanation given by the LLM. Does it explain everything in detail? No, it doesn't, in part because we impose a limit on the length of the reply. But is it a good start for more in-depth research? I believe that it is. Or finally, look at the phrase soft day in the 20 countries in the globe corpus. This has special cultural relevance to the drizzly, overcast weather in Ireland, the Emerald Isle, after all. And of course, the LLM already understands that as well. One of the bread and butter tools of corpus linguistics is the analysis of concordances or keyword in context, KWIC, lines of text. And LLMs can really help us here as well. For example, consider the word fathom to understand. The corpus data shows that fathom is nearly always preceded by a negative word. In other words, it has strong negative prosody. When we analyze the KWIC lines, the LLM looks at many different features: frequent collocations to the left and right of the node word, semantic prosody, degree of formality, phraseological patterns, such as recurring words and phrases, grammatical patterns, pragmatic function, and more. Remember, this is what LLMs are really good at, finding patterns in lots of text. And sure enough, whether it is GPT from OpenAI or Gemini from Google or any of the other LLMs, it has great insight into each of these different topics. Let's just take one more example. The famous corpus linguist John Sinclair liked to talk about the phrase naked eye, because it was a nice example of how a word or phrase can sometimes be found only in a limited number of contexts. In the case of naked eye, it is limited mainly to the phrases invisible or visible to the naked eye, or to see something with the naked eye. In addition, it often occurs in science texts, especially astronomy. And no surprise, the LLM knows and comments on all of these things. In the final section of this video, we'll briefly show how LLMs can be used to generate lists of phrases for particular concepts or topics. You might remember, though, from earlier in this video when we said that LLMs weren't particularly good at generating lists of words and phrases, or at least ones that matched up well with actual corpus data. That's why at EnglishCorpora.org we use a hybrid approach. We have the LLM generate lots and lots of words and phrases for a particular topic or concept. We then run each and every one of these against the particular corpus that we're using. And we then display the words and phrases in order of their frequency in the corpus. So if the LLM goes off the rails, as it were, and comes up with a word or phrase that's very, very uncommon in English, at least for a particular concept, the user will see that it's listed way at the bottom of the list of words or phrases. So let's look at some concrete examples of how we can generate words and phrases for a particular topic or concept. Let's start out really simple with words and phrases related to astronomy in the COCA corpus. Again, after the corpus gets the suggestions back from the LLM, it finds the frequency of each word or phrase in the corpus, in this case COCA, and we can even have it display it by section of the corpus if we want. And it displays these in order of frequency. And of course, the user can click on any of these words or phrases to see them in context. We can get even more abstract, such as the prompt "professions that belong mainly to women in the 1800s" in the COA corpus, and we get examples like seamstress and milliner and laundress, wet nurse, charwoman, and so on. Sometimes it helps to add good or bad examples to help the LLM come up with a list of good words or phrases. For example, if we're looking for words and phrases related to the COVID-19 pandemic, we can suggest some relevant phrases to help the LLM along. And we can get as specific as we want. Social implications of COVID, hoarding of goods during COVID, the development of COVID vaccines, or whatever. Remember, we're dealing with an LLM that uses advanced neural networks to access the information from trillions of words of text. There's no need to limit our view to traditional corpus linguistic ways of doing things. We can even do a phrase as abstract as "ways to express being tired," and it gives us good results, especially if we help it with some good prompts. We can also have the LLM generate short definitions for the words and phrases in the list, which can be helpful for non-native speakers and non-specialists of a given topic. For example, these are words and phrases related to nuclear reactors, and notice the definitions. We can also click on an arrow to find words and phrases that are related to a particular entry, such as radioactive decay. In this way, we can follow a semantic trail through an unlimited number of related concepts. And in terms of usefulness for non-native speakers, how about the following? Users can just enter a word or phrase in another language, and the corpus will show related words and phrases in English. For example, a Spanish speaker could use the prompt, the word manguera in Spanish, where manguera means garden hose, and take a look at the results. Or to combine a fairly abstract search with the ability to search from another language, how about words and phrases related to the German phrase "Es tut mir leid," which means roughly, "I'm sorry." Here are the related phrases from the TV corpus, which has very, very informal language. And as always, we can click on any word or phrase to see it in context in the corpus. As you can see, the possibilities are endless when it comes to using LLMs to generate words and phrases for a particular topic or concept. So to summarize what we've seen in this video, the corpora at englishcorpora.org provide very rich data, probably better than that from any other set of corpora, especially for variation by genre, time period, and dialect. The LLMs, on the other hand, are great at classifying data, such as collocates, and providing possible explanations for variation. We've been able to seamlessly integrate the corpus data with the insights from the LLMs. There are currently 6 LLMs that are available from within the corpus interface: GPT, Gemini, Claude, DeepSeek, Llama, and Grok. As the LLMs improve in the future, and everything suggests that they will, then so will the corpus insights. All the types of searches shown in this video are already working. That's how we got the data for this video. We still have a few more features to add. I'll be traveling a lot internationally in the next 2 to 3 months, but all of these features should be publicly available by late July 2025. In summary, nothing like this is available with other online corpora. The corpora from EnglishCorpora.org are already the most widely used online corpora, but these new AI-based features will make them even more useful for teaching, learning, and research.